Every morning after you make your coffee, do you just toss that wet pile of grounds into the trash? Then grab your cup and walk to the window and look out at your half-dead vegetable garden with a sigh? Let me tell you a secret. The thing you just threw away is exactly what your garden is starving for. Today I'm not going to give you a bunch of theory. I'm going to show you 3 tricks. All of them I've tried myself, made mistakes, and figured out what really works. Especially the third one. You might have been gardening your whole life and never heard of it, but it can bring those sad, droopy tomatoes back to life in a week or two. Before I get into the details, let me share a belief I've come to. After farming for more than 20 years, I've learned that real gardening isn't about buying this powder or that liquid from the store. It's about learning to see the value in the waste you already have in your home. Coffee grounds are the perfect example. You don't have to spend a penny. You don't have to haul heavy bags. Just change your way of thinking, and those little grounds you produce every day can turn into black gold for your garden. All right, let's get started. The first trick, Faye, I call it the thin mix method. This is the simplest one, perfect for beginners. After your morning coffee, don't throw away the grounds. Put them in a small bowl. When they're cool enough, go out to your garden and use your fingers or a little hand rake to sprinkle a thin layer on the soil around your plants. And remember, faith in. When I first started, I got greedy too. I piled a thick ring of grounds around my tomato plants. You know what happened? Once those grounds dried, they formed a hard crust. Water couldn't get through, and the roots underneath got choked. So I learned my lesson. Now I spread the grounds about as thick as a credit card, then lightly scratch them into the top inch or so of soil with a rake. That way, no crust forms, and the nutrients can slowly work their way down. Do this once a week. After about a month, reach down and feel the soil. You'll notice it's not as hard as it used to be. It'll be softer, and the color will start to darken. The second trick takes a little more effort, but the results are twice as good. I call it the worm diner method. You already know how important worms are, Faye. I've talked about that before. But did you know that worms love coffee grounds like kids love candy? I buried an old PVC pipe in each corner of my garden, drilled holes in the lower half, and dumped coffee grounds in every day. You don't have to use a pipe. You can just dig a hole about the size of your fist in the ground, dump the grounds in, and cover it with dry leaves or straw. Why cover it? Because if the grounds sit out in the sun, they dry out, and worms don't like dry stuff. Put a layer of straw on top, keep it moist underneath, and worms will come in droves. They eat the coffee grounds. And what they leave behind is the best natural fertilizer there is, Faye worm castings, and they'll multiply right there. As long as you keep adding grounds to that spot, the worms will work their way through your whole garden. Last fall, when I pulled out my old tomato plants, I checked the spot where I'd been burying grounds. The soil was packed with worms, I mean thick with them. Just a few feet away, there were hardly any. So the real magic here isn't the coffee grounds feeding your plants directly. It's the coffee grounds feeding the worms and the worms feeding your garden. You're just the simple delivery guy. The third trick is the strongest one, and it's my personal favorite. I call it coffee ground power water. This is for emergencies. Say you have a tomato plant that looks big enough, but the leaves are yellow, and it's only setting a few small fruits. Or your pepper seedlings have been in the ground for a month, and they still haven't grown. The first 2 tricks are too slow for that. You need this one. Here's what you do. Find an old bucket, a 5-gallon paint bucket, or any plastic bucket will work. Throw in 2 cups of used coffee grounds, fill it with water, and stir it with a stick. Let that bucket sit in your yard for a full day, At least 24 hours is best. The next day, the water will have turned a deep brown like weak tea. Then use a cup or a dipper to pour that water around the base of the plants that are struggling. Don't pour it on the leaves, just around the roots. That water is full of nitrogen, potassium, and trace minerals that leached out of the grounds. And because it's liquid, the roots can take it up right away, no waiting for microbes to break anything down. In 3 or 4 days, you'll see a change. The new leaves will be noticeably darker green, and the stems will get thicker. My neighbor's beans used to look sickly and yellow. I told him to try this. He watered them twice, and 2 weeks later he came running over to tell me his bean vines were climbing higher than his head, and the pods were thick as could be. This trick works especially well for heavy producers like tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and cucumbers, the plants that need a lot of energy. Use it once every 10 days. Don't overdo it. Now that I've given you the 3 tricks, I know a few questions are probably on your mind. First question, will coffee grounds make my soil too acidic? I've heard that rumor for 20 years. Here's the truth. Fresh, unbrewed coffee grounds are indeed acidic, but we're using the grounds after they've been brewed. All that acidity has already been dissolved into your coffee cup, the leftover grounds. I've tested them myself with a soil pH kit. They run about 6.5 to 6.8 pretty much neutral, and that's exactly the range most vegetables love. So don't worry about acid. Second question, what if I don't drink coffee? Then go to your local coffee shop. Starbucks, Dunkin', and all the little independent shops throw away pounds and pounds of coffee grounds every day. Take a bucket, walk in, ask politely. Most of them will give you as much as you want for free. Sometimes the barista will even thank you because you're saving them a bag of trash. When you bring the grounds home, if they're wet, don't seal them in a plastic bag. Spread them out in a cardboard box or a mesh bag to dry. Otherwise, they'll get moldy. Mold isn't really a problem for the garden, but it smells bad. Just let them air out. One more important thing, I need to warn you about something. For very young seedlings, those that just sprouted a week or two ago, try not to let coffee grounds touch them directly. Even though the caffeine level is very low now, it can still slightly slow down those tiny, sensitive roots. Wait until the seedlings are about as tall as the width of your hand. After that, go ahead. Mature plants, ones that are flowering or fruiting, they love it. You might ask, should I use all 3 tricks or just pick one? Here's my advice. If you're just starting out, begin with the first trick, the thin mix method. It's simple and hard to mess up. Once you get comfortable, add the second trick, dig a few worm diners. Then when your plants are growing fastest and need the most food, like. In the middle of summer, use the third trick, the power water, to give them a boost. Use all 3 together, and your garden will transform. I've seen too many people spend good money on fancy bagged fertilizers, then bend over their aching backs spreading that stuff around, only to end up with harder soil and smaller plants. It's not that those fertilizers are bad, it's that the whole approach is wrong. Chemical fertilizer is like giving your plants a shot of adrenaline. They turn green for a minute, but the salt in that stuff kills the microbes and the worms in your soil. Next year you need even more, it's a death spiral. Coffee grounds are different. They feed the soil. You give the grounds back to the earth. The microbes eat them. The worms eat them. And together they turn those grounds into the exact form of nutrients that plants can take up. Once that cycle is running, your garden has its own engine. You don't have to be the guy stoking the fire with all your strength. You just have to be the guy who throws in a stick every day. Easy, effective, and it gets easier every season. Let me tell you about an old friend of mine so you'll believe me. His name is Charlie. He's 68, used to work for the post office. After he retired, he took up gardening, but he was terrible at it. His soil was that pale, sandy stuff that won't hold water or nutrients. He was spending $200 or $300 a year on fertilizer, and his tomatoes still wouldn't grow. Last spring, I brought him a bucket of coffee grounds and showed him these 3 tricks. He was skeptical, but he tried. He saved his grounds from his morning coffee and used the thin mix method. Then he went to Starbucks and got 2 big bags and dug 3 worm diner holes in his garden. By June, his tomatoes were going crazy. I walked past his yard and could see those big red fruits from the street. His wife called me later and joked that Charlie's blood pressure had dropped because squatting in the garden watching his worms and tomatoes was better than his pills. That's just a joke. But you get the feeling. One more thing I want to emphasize. A lot of people think coffee grounds only provide nitrogen. but they also contain small amounts of phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and other trace minerals. They're not a perfect all-Phaeon fertilizer, but they are an outstanding soil conditioner. Their biggest contribution isn't feeding the plants directly, it's feeding the life in the soil. When you keep using them, you'll see the soil change with your own eyes. It'll go from grayish to deep brown, from hard and clumpy to soft and crumbly. On a hot, dry day, you'll find that other gardens are cracked and dry, but yours is still moist just below the surface. That's the extra water holding capacity from organic matter. After a heavy rain, other gardens might have puddles that won't drain, but yours soaks it right in. That's the tunnels the worms dug. These changes don't happen overnight, but stick with it for one season, and you'll see my suggestion to you. Start tomorrow morning. Save the grounds from your first cup of coffee. Put them in an old yogurt tub or a small bowl on your kitchen counter. Save them for 2 or 3 days until you have a small bowlful. Then go out to your garden and use the first trick. At the same time, find a big bucket and start soaking your third trick power water. When your plants are about knee high, give them that water every 10 days or so. By fall, you'll be glad you made the decision today. Gardening can be complicated, but it can also be simple. The complicated part is what the fertilizer companies want you to believe, that you need all their expensive products. The simple part is that nature already put the answer right in front of you every single day. Coffee grounds aren't trash. They're a bridge between you and your soil. You enjoy your cup of coffee every morning, and then you take 2 seconds to build that bridge. Your garden will take care of the rest. Comment below and tell me, how many cups of coffee do you drink a day? Which trick are you going to try first? If you've already used coffee grounds in your garden, share your experience too. Hit like, hit subscribe. Next time I'll tell you what to do with eggshells, banana peels, and even the water you wash your rice with. Take care of your soil, and your soil will take care of your garden. I'll see you next time.